What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Steelers Breakdown Podcast. Joint practice today. Lots happening down at Acrisure Stadium 2 days ahead of the Steelers' second preseason game against the Buffalo Bills. Joint practices are interesting, man. This is the first one I've ever done. Um, and when you actually watch these, there is an energy to them. A different energy that I haven't felt at a training camp practice. It's competitive, but I also think you get a lot out of, special teams and other things that you can't really simulate when you're going with your guys. And you can hit a little bit. You don't have to worry as much about it. Obviously, you don't want to injure a ton of guys on either team, but you can have some liberty to do some more physicality within everything. And so when I look at what the Steelers did today, I really thought the big thing that the Steelers did very well was that they mixed up the team reps to give guys looks. And so we saw a lot of different looks. We saw guys being challenged by different people. And so I really enjoyed watching that part. So let's hop into some of these things that I thought were really fun to watch. First of all, I loved seeing Zach Frazier, and I love seeing Broderick Jones go up against Ed Oliver and go up against Von Miller. I love that when you can get young guys up against proven vets that are stars in this league. And the reason I love it is because you get to see, where the technique's really honing in at, where you have to really work. And so I thought both these guys took it to a challenge. Um, we really saw Broderick Jones have his best practice of camp. I think, you know, he went up against Gregory Rousseau in the one-on-ones, won both of those, and Rousseau's a long, pretty powerful rusher. Von Miller's obviously very bendy and has different types of moves. He's not quite as explosive as he was in his prime, but he's still a very good pass rusher. And I thought he did really well. Won the one-on-one rep that he had. And Broderick's not a technical maestro and isn't yet. He probably won't be for a while in his NFL career. He came out inexperienced and never really was that. Like for example, Troy Fautanu this year, even though he's hurt and is going to miss 2 weeks with that MCL sprain, is pretty far like out in front of where Broderick was last year. And so it's kind of interesting when you think about that. But Broderick is playing well, and he's doing a lot really well. And so I thought today he put himself on the map saying, okay, listen, there have been questions about what I can do, but not today. Not today. I'm going to go up against a guy like Von Miller and prove myself. And I thought he did. I thought he did a really nice job there. So for sure, impressed by what I saw to Broderick Jones. More than that, though, I really loved what I saw out of Justin Fields. I talked about it in the shorter Steelers training camp rewind, but he has been awesome when you get him in competitive things like this. He was awesome at Friday Night Lights, and he's really, really solid now when you looked at him in this practice. They flip flopped Russell Wilson and Justin Fields consistently today. So, for example, you would have one 11 on 11 period be Russell Wilson, and he would take all the snaps, and then the next 11 on 11 period it would be Justin Fields taking all the snaps. And what we saw out of the Fields ones where he moved the ball much better, it was more fluid. Both of these quarterbacks have really good chemistry with different guys. But the reason I thought the Russ offense moved better was because of his legs. The passing games were pretty similar. They both had some really nice throws outside the numbers, in the middle of the field, wherever you kind of want to dice it up. They each had good throws against the ones and the twos. But Russell Wilson couldn't really match what Justin Fields is doing with his legs. For example, in the 2 minute drill, Fields took the twos all the way down for a touchdown, and a 30-yard rushing touchdown where he just broke contain was what ended that. And so I thought that was really impressive. I think to his credit, he continues to play better and better. And I think he's learning this offense really well. And I think he has a basis to where he can play at that level. Again, I think, and I've said this before, where I think if I'm predicting who's going to start week one, it's always been Russell Wilson. Um, but that's always because I think the pole position stuff, he was always guaranteed there to have that kind of nice cushion. I just don't think the leash, even if he does start, is ever going to be particularly huge. It's not going to be particularly big. And so, Justin Fields is showing the Steelers, if not anything else, that if they need a spark, they can turn to it. 100%. That is what he's doing. He played very well today. So, in terms of concerns, we talked a little bit about concerns coming out of training camp yesterday, and I talked about how I was concerned about Gunner and depth corner. Boy, were those ever really validated today. It was extremely validated today, to be quite honest with you, because first of all, when I watched these depth corners, not named Corey Trice, I think Trice actually did pretty well today, to be quite honest with you. But when I looked at guys like Anthony Averett, guys like um, Darius Rush and Thomas Graham, and all these other guys that you kind of are looking to step up and could be a guy that makes the roster and they're going to need them because they absolutely are going to need gunners and et cetera, et cetera. I haven't been impressed by any of them. And the gunner situation is kind of dire because Darius Rush and Des Fitzpatrick are probably the two best gunners on the team, which is okay if they're going to make the roster. I'm just not sure either of them will. Rush is probably the last corner on the team right now, but I think they'd be wise to go out of the organization and find somebody that can be a better coverage guy and be someone that can play gunner at a high level. And I think those guys are going to be available. And so that's where I would look. I just didn't see consistent coverage there from those guys. And the gunner drills were tough. And today was honestly a pretty tough day for Beanie Bishop. I mean, he competes every day, and I like the fire that he brings to competitive fire, but guys were beating him. Khalil Shakir gave him some trouble today. Man, that was the issue today with the defense was the tight ends, Dalton Kincaid, and then Quentin Morris because Dawson Knox didn't practice today. Those two, and then Khalil Shakir just really ate them up at the middle of the field. And Beanie Bishop was on the wrong side of a number of those Khalil Shakir catches, which is something I think to be slightly concerned about. We'll see what happens in the slot. Thomas Graham also was playing slot with Grayland Arnold on IR now, and I thought Arnold had really played well, to be quite honest with you. I thought him and Beanie were both going to make the team. So we'll see where Beanie goes. This was a down practice for him. I think he's had a pretty good camp, but I did think he had some struggles in the game against the Texans last week, and so I'm kind of interested to see where things go this week. I think that's going to be very important to watch and very important to break down because we know how important and how key that slot corner position is going to be for the Steelers. And if they have to go outside to make if they need to go outside the organization to make an acquisition, Bean Bishop's performance is going to be a big part of that. So we'll see where that goes. Overall, some big picture takeaways. We talked about the tight ends and Shakir in the middle of the field, kind of being issues for this defense. From an offensive standpoint, the run game, at first in practice, I even tweeted this out that I thought they were kind of coming out slow. And they did because a lot of what they did today was boomer bust. They would have a huge run for 15, 20 yards, and the next two would be -3, -4. That's really what it was. It was either you were hitting it huge or you were getting like stuffed in the backfield where they were just penetrating on whether I was blitzes or someone got their face crossed, whatever it was. That's what it was in the run game. But I thought as the practice went on, the Steelers started to kind of get going in the run game a little bit more consistently. Najee Harris today was incredible. His runs almost always went for significant yardage. But the rest of the backs, had issues. It really wasn't their fault. This D line, of course, for the Bills has a lot of talent along it. So the Steelers had some ups and downs today. In that run game, it was boom or bust, but they had a lot of boom. Najee Harris had like a 40-yard touchdown. Jalen Warren had a nice uh, mid-zone run where he clocked it outside of the tackle. When they got outside the tackles, they really ran it well. I just thought when they got inside the tackles and had to run between the tackles, I thought things were a little bit dicey at times. So an interesting kind of up and down seesaw type of practice for that group, and for that game in particular. So I'm fairly interested to see how they look in game because I thought last week against the Texans that was one part of the game that looked pretty good. And so obviously that's a massively important part of this team's success too. So the run game is going to be huge. I think right now, you just looked at the wide zone, mid zone stuff, which is the bread and butter of Arthur Smith's scheme, is working really well. They've worked on that for a while. I think now, they're going to focus on duo, inside zone, and the gap stuff. I think timing's been a little bit off on those. So I would like to see that be fixed up a little bit. And so it was a really spirited practice, really good stuff. Positives and negatives for the Steelers. Broderick Jones played all right tackle today, but had his best practice, which I think is always a good thing. He needs to ascend because I still have concerns if he's fully healthy, but they need Broderick Jones to play really well this year. We'll see with this quarterback room. Of course, Russell Wilson is starting against the Bills, so I'm interested to see how he looks with the first team offense. We saw Justin Fields last week. So I think that's naturally, whether it's a competition or whatever you think about it, Russell Wilson should be getting the start this week, coming off the calf strain. And so this group seems to be a more talented group than it was last year. I do think that coming out of the final training camp practice, I think it's a more talented group than they were last year. I think they have things to iron out. I still think they need another receiver. I still think they need another depth cornerback. I think these are two positions that they can address, whether that wide receiver is Brandon Ayuk or it's Robert Woods, someone else, that they get a cut down day. I think corner, they can add someone. Someone's probably naturally going to get cut. That'll pique their interest. So I guess we'll see kind of how all of those play out, but I thought this was a really fun practice to cover, to watch. And you saw the competitive kind of juices come out, and especially on special teams where you saw them, you were gunner drills and you saw them, get to learn the kickoffs and all of these things. I thought it was a really productive practice for the Steelers, and I'm really excited to see what we can get out of that Saturday game. All right, folks, you are listening to this. Make sure to leave a review. If you are watching this, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn on the notification bell for more. We'll be back tomorrow. And of course, we'll be covering the game on Saturday. Thanks for listening, everybody.